What ended your friendship with your best friend? I gave one of my best friends a job at my convenience store when he was down on his luck. He worked in his dad's shop previously for about $6.50 an hour, and his dad was toxic, so he quit and came to me for work till he got a better job. The inferiority complex kicked in, and he started talking down to me and talking about how I was spoiled and a daddy's boy. My dad gave me the shop. I paid him the best money he ever made, and he would routinely go off on me for perceived managerial issues or start stupid arguments with customers, like not selling kids toy guns because they would be at risk of not selling cigarettes or beer to pregnant women. Which I understand is a personal choice, but as a business, I can't just refuse to sell people their stuff they're legally allowed to buy. COVID hit and he became a huge anti-masker, and I finally fired him after a huge blowout about me trying to establish a mask policy. He's a Marine now and got married to a girl he's known for 2 weeks. We still talk, but I have never trusted him since. It sucks because I think he was just like me, but from a worse situation. If I was in his shoes, maybe I'd be way worse, you know? Story number 2. This one hits deep. Recently decided it was time to let go and move. Grew up together and were best friends since 6th grade. But I was the only one really reaching out and making plans anymore. When we'd make plans, 8 out of 10 times he'd blow me off last minute, but would always tell him, "It's fine, man, stuff happens," and he'd apologize over and over, but those apologies felt more and more empty each time. It finally hit a point where we made plans and he left me on red and just ghosted me. That's when I decided mentally I couldn't take this anymore, and I've been making up excuses for him in my head just over the past decade. I'm glad I finally realized it, but it does make me sad losing someone I thought was my best friend. I haven't heard from him since the last message he left me on red. Story number 3. She didn't invite me to her birthday party. It was my first time back from college and I would have been able to go out. She made a whole Facebook event page and invited everybody but me. I found out through mutual friends. The kicker was no one showed up, and she called me crying that no one else showed up. Sucks to suck, doesn't it? Story number 4. After 14 years of friendship, we get an apartment and suddenly he loses his job as a personal trainer because of a dress code violation. He wore a hoodie to work allegedly, and then 2 to 3 months of him not working. Then after he agreed to pay me back eventually, all he ever gave me was $400 from his mom. I paid over 14 grand for the year. So I paid the full year lease and he stayed 8 months in total. I never talked to him again, also because I found a receipt where he was trying to make a copy of my car keys. What kind of a friend is that? Story number 5. I was living with my best friend. One day I checked the mail and see a late notice for the electric bill that was in her name. I'm confused because my boyfriend and I pay all of our part bills in full every month and was under the impression that she was doing the same. Nope, she was paying the bare minimum to keep the lights on and pocketing the rest. I put 2 and 2 together that she was stealing from us when she refused to let us see the actual accounts for the bills or anything. And one night while I was sleeping, she stole $15 off the desk in my office. And I was going to use that to buy a used microwave in the morning. Like, why? Then she moved out in the middle of the night and cut off the water and electricity, and I had to pay over $1,000 in past due bills and late fees to have our utilities turned back on. Also stole a bunch of other stuff from me, and I was finding late notices hidden in random drawers for over a month. Pretty sure she was stealing my money, weed, etc. when we lived in our previous apartment together too. In hindsight, I should have expected things like this because I knew her my entire life and knew she had a habit of shoplifting and stuff. The part that hurt the most is that I would just give her money or whatever if she needed it, but she had to steal it and throw away a 20-year relationship instead. There were other factors that made me just done with her as a person too. Story number 6. I had a good friend in 8th grade who was a very kind and affectionate person. Never had a crush on her at all. We were physically affectionate people, never sexual. She would mess with my hair and sometimes put her hand on my leg, so, I did the same. At the time, her boyfriend was aware of our relationship and was cool with it. I was even good friends with him too. One day, I got called to the principal's office, and I walked into my mother, father, principal, and a police officer asking me to sit down. I felt like someone I knew died, but no. They said that she had accused me of sexually assaulting her. I spent 2 hours crying, giving them my phone, watching them comb through my texts, reviewing video footage, and interviewing the boyfriend and the girl. In the end, she lied to her parents because she got caught that she was dating her boyfriend and used me as a scapegoat and saying her boyfriend hit her. The police called my household and said that I was free and that if we wanted to sue, we would win. The rest of the year, anytime I saw her, I walked away and threw up because I felt like I was a monster. After severe depression, I sat in my room and got over it. The following years, the boyfriend and I would joke about it all the time. Good man, terrible friend girl. Story number 7. I had a neighbor kid who was taken away to military school, and a year later, she made false sexual assault accusations against 4 of the neighborhood kids, including me. She claimed to have recalled these repressed memories during a therapy session and said the sexual assault events took place 3 years prior to her remembering them, which would have meant the accused were 9, 10, 11, and 12 years old. The police showed up at my school and pulled me out of class without explanation and then brought me in for questioning. Within minutes of the interview starting, the cop said I was free to go. I remember the officer asking questions, kind of smirking like he knew the accusations were false too. I met up with 2 of the other people who were accused, and we were all kind of in shock, but none of us completely surprised that one of our crazy former neighbors would casually try and ruin other people's lives. To be fair, she legit had the worst nightmare of a family, and I feel bad for her to have grown up with insane parents. She never had a chance. Story number 8. My husband at the time had to step away from his job because he was dealing with pretty severe mental health issues. We had a young child and I was a stay-at-home mom, and it was really devastating, not only financially but socially, as a lot of our social life revolved around his job and work friends. I was really good friends with a coworker's wife. The coworker moved into my husband's higher up position when my husband had to resign. We had to sell our home since we couldn't make the mortgage payment anymore. The friend came to help me pack, and while doing so, told me that they always knew this would happen because the Lord had revealed it to my husband in a dream several years earlier. They had basically been waiting around for my husband to fail so that the coworker could succeed and fulfill the Lord's prophecy? Yeah, no. Said goodbye to her, moved out of state, and never looked back. I won't tolerate people using religion to be jerks. Story number 9. He was sentenced to prison for molesting 2 children. I went to visit him in prison because I did not believe it was possible it could be true. 1, I learned it was true, and 2, he did not seem to understand what he did was wrong. Because it was true, and because he did not understand it was wrong, it is likely he will repeat the actions when released from prison. I cannot be friends or have any association to that guy. I've known this guy for over 35 years. Story number 10. I was away at uni at the time and hadn't heard from a friend for a week, which wasn't unusual, but he hadn't responded to any messages either. The following week, I get a message from a mutual friend with a link to an article from our hometown's local newspaper with a report on a conviction of a man who had groomed and sexually assaulted a teenage girl 2.5 years prior. The case had only just gone to court. He pleaded guilty, thinking a first-time offense would mean no prison time, but he ended up with a 2.5-year prison sentence. That had been why I hadn't heard from him, because his phone was off while he was incarcerated. I felt sick. I felt sick that he had hidden this from me, from us. The court appearances, the arrest, everything, for 2.5 years. He had said nothing, just hoping the problem would go away. I had trusted him with so much, and he had trusted me so little. He eventually phoned me from prison and explained that it wasn't how it was reported, that she had led him on. I thought I'd be a good friend and just help him get through the sentence and remained in contact. You know, prison can be rough. Maybe he was an innocent man? I had my doubts. I mean, newspapers get things wrong all the time, right? He would call every few weeks and he'd chat away like nothing had happened other than he was calling from prison. I spent a year unsure of whether this was someone who had the whole world against him or was such a piece of garbage that he just didn't care who he hurt. Listen, hindsight is 20/20, of course. In the thick of it, you can see clearly enough to rationalize, especially when all you have to go on is a short newspaper article and the word of a trusted friend. He was eventually released just over a year later, because that's the thing if you're a good inmate. When he was released, his family threw a big welcome home party, of which I was invited. It felt weird, but I went. I needed to see him. I needed to look him in the eye and I needed to know what happened. It was just so freaking strange to be a part of something like that. Like, congratulations on serving half your prison sentence for grooming and sexually assaulting a minor. When I finally got to talk to him privately, I learned the truth that it did happen mostly the way that it was reported. Maybe initially he didn't know her age, but she told him and he still pursued her. He didn't see anything wrong with what he did either, because he convinced himself that she was leading him on. His family, of course, believed that a 15-year-old girl was the sexual deviant in all this, despite all the text messages and actual physical evidence that showed otherwise. Not long after, I returned to university. I was so angry and upset, I felt betrayed. He felt no remorse for what he had done either. I wanted to hurt him like he had hurt me and the girl he preyed on. So I did the mature thing. I ghosted him. Honestly, I think a year of dealing with this messed me up more than I realized. I have a ton of trauma from other stuff that's happened in my life. I have always had trust issues on some level, but this is the one that made me question every relationship with every person I've ever had, no matter how long or how well I thought I knew them. It took a long time for me to stop being wary of the closest to me, and I have moved on in the most part, but this whole event changed me. Story number 11. He leaked personal files that were information about the people we take in. He was my coworker at a funeral home, and he tried to blame it on me. Those files included autopsies, pictures of the actual body, legal information, and so on. He would also not follow the requests given by family members, religious practices such as thoroughly cleaning the body before the burial, etc. Just a horrible person overall, and I truly believe that he leaked those things for personal fetishes because he had serious problems and we were suspecting him already. Story number 12. A car accident. He went to his new job with a new car and never heard of him after that. Got a letter from his parents that he will be buried soon. We'll never forget about him. He was such a good friend to me. Story number 13. We were friends since primary school, and in primary, she had a very typical childlike personality, as you'd expect a child to have, of course. The thing is, as we got older, she never lost this personality. She still behaved like a child in the sense that she was over the top positive about every little thing that happened. I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. She saw the world through a rose-colored glasses and added her own little glitter to it. There are reasons for her being like that. Dysfunctional family life, abusive father, she was the middle child who always felt like she had to keep the peace amongst everyone, so she developed this personality to compensate for the negativity in her home life. But for me, I didn't feel like she and I were compatible anymore as friends, as I often felt like I had to match her energy when I was around her. This slowly got more and more difficult, especially in my late teens, as I went through a severe period of depression, so being her friend overall was just exhausting. Eventually, we just faded out of each other's lives. She is the one friend I do feel guilty about drifting apart from because, unlike my other friends, she did absolutely nothing wrong. She's someone who's truly wholesome in spite of everything she grew up with. We're in our 20s now. Our moms are still close. Last I heard, she's met a wonderful guy in whom she's living with. She doesn't want to get married, and I don't blame her. But he treats her right, which is all that matters, and honestly, I couldn't be happier for her. Story number 14. Jealousy. We were super close for 20 years, and as we got older, she compared absolutely everything we did. I wound up getting a great job and apartment, and I watched it tear her apart. She even admitted to me that she had a hard time watching others do well. It was impossible for me to stick around. Constant microaggressions. I tried my hardest to stay friends because we had been through so much together. But I finally realized it wasn't fair for me to constantly, and I mean constantly, be secretive about my achievements or be on the receiving end of utter disdain. One day I stopped taking her calls and just never looked back. Story number 15. I still don't know. We were super close for about 7 years maybe, since my first year in college, when she just didn't want to be friends with me anymore. Clearly she felt something was amiss between us because our mutual friends also gave me the cold shoulder after that. Honestly, it actually wasn't as devastating as it sounds. I think she would have told me if I legit did something bad, so probably something else was going on. She came out as lesbian and got a girlfriend right before this, and I think that had a lot to do with it. Maybe the girlfriend didn't like her girlfriend having such a close woman friend. The weird thing was, I did not find it devastating, and I never thought I would be that kind of person. But as soon as those other people sort of turned on me, I was out of there with that group. I felt it was good riddance to bad rubbish if that's what they were like. Maybe I would have been distraught if we were still in college. However, we were way past that time, plus that type of politicking seemed childish. Story 16. She cheated on this guy she was with almost constantly. She cheated on him while miscarrying his child. She cheated on him after she got a disease and he helped her learn to walk again. She cheated on him after he raised her son and took care of him like his own. She cheated on him after he dropped charges of an assault against her and property damage. She cheated on him after she ruined his reputation in the town. He comes from a big family business. She cheated on him and then posted screenshots of him having a breakdown, calling him abusive, and everyone on Facebook ate it up because single mom with a kid is being mistreated. You know, everyone's gonna eat that up. After I confronted her about how awful she was being, she said, "If you're not on my side, you're not my friend." 12 years of best friendship down the drain, just like that. Story number 17. Basically, this dude is a chronic liar and is just an overall jerk. He lies about everything. My friend group is made up of 6 people, including him. There's a girl that's a part of it, very innocent and shy. Well, before the dude's party, he texts the group chat, "Don't be surprised if any of my family says that you're my girlfriend. I told them you were." Now she's embarrassed because 1, she isn't into relationships, she just isn't interested in one right now, and 2, she had to keep correcting people the whole time of the party. That was in December. Everyone was pissed, but we got over it. In March, it's another friend's party where he tries to kiss the same girl. She says no and goes somewhere else. Later that day, he has the audacity to say that he might as well kill himself because no one loves him. That made her feel so bad, she tried to comfort him, and that bothered everyone again. We genuinely care about this girl because he's manipulating her. This was me and my friend Jay's last straw. We cut him off, but he was left in the group chat because some people were saying that we were being too harsh on him. Me and Jay just ignored him for months. The final straw was when he lied about being in a school shooting. It was on the news and a student brought a gun to the school to show off. This was a week after the Oxford shooting. Me being curious, I tell him I saw the news. "Are you okay? What happened?" He says the person shot into his room and killed 3 kids. Surprised, I googled it and there was nothing that mentions that. I call him out and he says, "You would rather listen to the police and the news than the person that was actually there?" And that was all I needed to hear. Story number 18. Best friends since junior high. We had a toxic past and hurt each other a lot while growing up. For about a decade, I wanted to get away from her. She resented anything good that happened to others. She would drag down anyone for trying to be positive. She was always the, "I'm going to say whatever I want, I don't care what others think" type. She could dish insults and judgments all day long, but never could accept the slightest criticism. She would gather info to tell her friends, significant others, just to start drama. It was always, "Life hates me," but she never did anything to improve her situation. She actively made it worse. We got into a fight one day and she was so mad that it was just the perfect opportunity to walk away. Story number 19. Her boyfriend and me blowing up. So first off, me and her hang out almost every single day and weekends for years. We were inseparable like twins before. Even after she switched to a better high school, nothing changed. She had a bit less time as she studied hard. After a year or so, I met my boyfriend. After a couple months, the relationship went downhill. Lots of fights, he abused me, threatened if I ever wanted to leave, cheated, etc. Needless to say, I was extremely depressed. During this time, she met her boyfriend too, and he was always around. It was impossible to do something with her alone, and I needed her, though I never told her what is really happening in my relationship. I was too ashamed. One day, we wanted to meet. After 3 months, but then she didn't and said her boyfriend doesn't like this bar. I asked her then if he really needed to come and if I cannot have my best friend for myself for just 1 hour after 3 months of not seeing her. Arguing and discussing led to a massive fight. It ended with her saying I don't accept her boyfriend, and he anyway told her I was a bad influence because of my lack of perspective. As I said, I was depressed. So she ended the friendship. It broke my heart and I cried for months. Lorena, if you read this and if you are on Reddit, I am so sorry. I still love you and miss you.